Now pay attention, 007. I've always tried to teach you two things. First, never let them see you bleeding.
And the second?
Always have them escape.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it may be. I'm Christopher Morales, that one Bond guy, and we're back with another installment of Initial Bond. Now, this one I have been really excited for. It's about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and it has everything to do with writing a novel. And this novel right here, in particular, is brand new, and we're going to be talking to none other than its author, Mr. Terrance Layhew. Welcome to Initial Bond. Thank you so much for hanging out. Welcome to the show.
Chris, thank you for having me on. I'm really excited. You're one of my favorite guys in the Bond community. It might be because like your logo also has like the wings on it. And as you know, I have a fondness for aviation adventure stuff. So I'm always like, chef's kiss. Chris knows where it's at.
Exactly. That's why we're going to get into this a little bit later and ask you what was the inspiration behind the aviation aspect of it. But yeah, as soon as I found out a couple of your novels, specifically Diamonds in Denver, is all about aviation and piloting, I was instantly hooked. Yep, there it is. So a little bit of background real quick for everybody watching before we get into the conversation. We have two novels out there right now in the Mitch Mayhew Adventure series, both of which can be found on Amazon, which you can find directly via the link in Terrance's Instagram or in the description of this video. And then the newest novel, which I had the absolute honor of winning one of the very first copies. And it's been fantastic read thus far. And oh yeah, it's signed. So yeah, I have one of the greatest ones ever. So Thorn, which is a little bit, you would say it's a bit more of a romance and a bit more of a different type of novel, definitely for those who are not necessarily looking for that action-packed adventure as the Mitch Mayhew series, but something a bit more low-key, something to get immersed in. It's definitely a great like bedside novel that I read before bed every night. But nevertheless, I mean, this adventure that I've been seeing you go on, it's because I've been following you for a while. I think even before you started writing the first few Mitch Mayhew novels, and just kind of seeing them go from ideas to publication to going on other interviews talking about your novels and the process has been so inspiring for me. And I'm sure many others out there that are kind of on the fence about wanting to do something of their own, voicing their own adventures, writing their own novels. So I guess let's just all start from the beginning. Since this is a James Bond themed channel, where did the James Bond James Bond connection and writing come to you initially, and how did that come into play into writing your own novels?
I have always wanted to write. Since I was a little kid, I wrote what I now realize would have been a treatment of Godzilla sequel because I enjoyed Godzilla films when I was a kid. So I came up with these illustrations and like set pieces, and the crayon drawings with very poorly spelled descriptions of what's happening was very entertaining to me. And I thought there was no way that Toho would not want to create Godzilla versus Monster Zero Part 2. Needless to say, that option was never picked up. But at age 8, I knew very clearly this is what I wanted to be when I grew up. Getting there was a point where I was reading the James Bond novels. And I think that especially as I've gotten older and reread them over and over again, seeing the way that Fleming created a story and created an adventure engine in a lot of ways, and the way that he separated his character of James Bond from all the other Bulldog Drummond type characters that came before him really has been something that stuck with me, because I don't want to just create a character. Like, I love Mitch Mayhew, and obviously I can't control if he's remembered 50 to 100 years from now, but I want to do the things that I can to position the character so he doesn't just become one of the many characters that exist that gets forgotten in a decade. And I think that's one of the things that's impressive about seeing Fleming work so tirelessly to create James Bond as someone who is enduring and unique, especially for the time and the place, and someone that we're still talking about today, which for a character it's over 75 years old is really impressive.
Yeah, definitely. Now, is there specifically an Ian Fleming novel that you remember reading that kind of triggered, okay, yeah, this guy is legit. This is something that I'm going to be using as more of a backbone, as inspiration to my novel, to my own novelization in the future.
I think it would probably be. Oh, it's really tough because just each one of them. From Russia with Love, I think is as a kid, I think the best James Bond story for me. It
Mhm.
has everything you want in a globe-trotting adventure. I believe that the James Bond novels fall into two different camps. There's the Cold War thrillers, and then
Mhm.
there's the men's adventure stories. Men's adventure stories are usually ones set in the Caribbean. They have um, pirate gold, or he's in like Doctor No, he's fighting
Mhm.
a giant squid, like things that are very fantastical that swing the other pendulum from the much more grounded, gritty Cold War stuff of Casino Royale or From Russia with Love. But I think From Russia with Love just encapsulates everything of the luxury, the spy, the thriller. That book in particular, just with the way that it constructs the plot so well, really has served as an inspiration to me, down to the fact that Fleming doesn't introduce Bond for like the first two chapters, I think. Like
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
get a lot of build up before you actually get to James Bond showing up on the page.
Walk me through the process. You eventually you get to this, you find out this love of writing ever since you were a young age, and then you get introduced to the Bond novels, and now you're getting older and want to be serious about creating your own voice. What was the process? Obviously, I know, I'm sure you had like a storyboard and you made an outline of everything. What was the process from start to publication? We'll just say with the first Mitch Mayhew adventure, if you can share that. I don't want you to
Mhm.
share too many of your secrets because I
Oh,
know there's definitely secrets, but
oh,
what you
there's
can
no
share.
secrets. um, Mitch Mayhew in particular came at a good time. So by the time I wrote Mitch Mayhew, I'd already written One Man's Treasure, Prose
Mhm.
Procrastination, and Reason and Romance, which I'm realizing I published Reason and Romance May 4th, 2022. So I'm coming up on my 4 years of
Wow,
publishing books, which is kind of crazy.
congratulations.
Thank you. Mitch Mayhew was born out of distress. I had already written and been trying to write like three different books in between publishing One Man's Treasure to when Mitch Mayhew came out. Like I kept working hard and hard, and nothing was really clicking. Thorn, in particular, I had rewritten like three times already at that point, trying to get it to click, and it wasn't working. Men's Adventure Fiction May came up with Veritas Entertainment. I was like, okay, I've had this idea in the back of my head for a while of a pilot story,
Mhm.
specifically set in that golden age of aviation.
Yep.
I love 1920s stuff. I'm like, let's give that a try. The idea was I will write Unwanted Passenger as like
Mhm.
the first act of a story, because the idea had been if it's successful, if it wins the contest, I'll try making it a full novel. So I just took what are my like major story beats, and I kind of just outlined, I know these five things have to happen. And
Mhm.
then I just, it was the easiest writing I think I've ever had, where I just zipped out the plot and then just refined it two or three times. My process is I usually do an outline, and then
Mhm.
I'll write the first draft that becomes essentially the treatment of the story. Then I rewrite that draft. So I'll open up two documents, one with the original draft and the other blank document, and I literally rewrite it. That becomes the second draft. Then the third draft is going over that second draft and just making edits there. And that's kind of the rough process for going from idea to book. But like I said, Mitch Mayhew was a fortuitous time, because at that point I was really feeling like maybe I just can't do this. Maybe I suck as a writer. I can't. I've tried writing three different things, solid ideas. Obviously, Thorn eventually became something, but it just nothing was clicking.
Mhm.
And Mitch Mayhew happened to fly into my life at the right time.
I see what you did there. Very well.
Thank you.
No, I mean that's great because so many people have these ideas and they put them out there and they get to a sense of what they call writer's block, where they can't
Mhm.
continue to get things to click. When you get to that point of writer's block, or if you get to that point of starting to doubt, what are some techniques that you use that kind of hop over that hump?
It depends on the severity. Um, I think that, like, if it's a small thing, just taking a walk is the biggest difference you can make. Just get yourself out of the chair, do a little walk around, get some fresh air. I think the other point, and this is something that I learned from working on Thorn, because I went back to it and I figured, I think I can make it work. I just need to figure out what's wrong.
Hmm.
I think that listening for where the story isn't sound. So I'm trying to think of like the correct metaphor here, but basically there's that idea of like you're looking for a fault line. You're looking for where the cracks are and just kind of like checking the integrity of your story at each major plot point and listening for what is the tinny sound. What's the thing that sounds false? What's the thing that isn't clicking? And I solved that problem like a math problem. And I know that sounds a little ridiculous, but I literally start going, okay, these are the factors here. And then I just kind of start writing out what are the pluses and minuses, like not even just a pros and cons list, but what are the things that are contributing here and what can I add or subtract to make it more structurally sound.
I am working on something that has been years in the making, and there are times where I step away for months because there's nothing that clicks, and then all of a sudden I either go through an experience or I see something that inspires me and then I go straight back. It's really a test to the amazing capability of Ian Fleming to be able to sit down and knock out 2,000 words at GoldenEye on a typewriter, which that's a
People
challenge.
don't appreciate how hard that is. One
Mhm.
quote that I love about writing is Winston Churchill said that a book is like a monster that you as the writer must embattle, you must defeat, and then slay, and then ultimately hurl before the public. Part of what I like about that idea is much like combine it with another piece of writer's advice, which is that two books are going to be written the same. Appreciating that every monster has its own battle. And just because something worked with a strategy for one book doesn't mean it's necessarily going to work with the other. And that's part of what makes writing and creativity fun is that it's permanently engaging. Like it demands a lot of you. And I think that's something that we find attractive about James Bond. His adventures demand a piece of him. They demand him to be engaged. It demands him to be capable. And I think that in our heart, we all want to feel brought to something. We want to feel engaged in something. We want to feel fulfilled by the accomplishment of a task. If it's easy, there's very little fulfillment in it. And that's where writing has this deep thing that can speak to ourselves.
Okay, we've written the novel, we've gotten through the drafts, and now it's the exciting part of putting it out there into the world. How exactly would you go about that, especially since you have experience of putting your own novels out there? Obviously, you can all purchase them and have physical copies, not just media copies, which is I love. How's that process work?
It depends on what you like really want. Like obviously traditional publishing is a long, arduous process. And just to put it out there, I have not traditionally published any of my books yet. Veritas Entertainment is an indie publisher, and they've been the ones that have put out Thorn and the Mitch Mayhew stories. I've self-published my other books. Traditional publishing is a very long process. Anyone that tells you differently is lying. The thing to be prepared for if you want a traditionally published deal is you need to, in a lot of cases, get an agent. You have to query. There's a lot of it takes time. Mitch Mayhew is currently with a audiobook publisher to see if they're interested in an audiobook version. And that's taking a long time just to even hear back. Like it is a time consuming process. So that's my first note is I don't have that much experience, but I do know it takes a long time.
Gotcha. Now, what are the differences for those who may not know between? I mean, obviously, it sounds like going through an indie publisher would be the easier way of getting your work out there. But say, is it possible that you go through an indie publisher and all of a sudden it picks up liking,
Traction.
and then it can go traction, and then it goes into an actual publish?
So yes, sometimes a great and to you and all the other Bond fans watching, a great series are the Thomas Kane thrillers, written by Andrew Warren. He's a
Okay.
big James Bond fan. His book White Tiger in particular, you really feel his Ian Fleming vibes. I actually think that he'd be an amazing pick for a future
Yeah.
continuation author. Fingers crossed. But he did self publishing for his first, like, I don't know, 6 books,
Mhm.
and a small press really liked his books and wanted to build out their thriller catalog, and they acquired his back catalog. They arranged for deals for his future books. Now, that all comes with pluses and minuses. The royalty, you in theory make more percentage wise doing self-publish or indie publish versus traditional publishing. So you make
Mhm.
more per copy.
Okay.
But the reach of that copy is different, because in theory the larger publisher has larger distribution, and that's really the name of the game, is how do you get your book in front of eyeballs. Now, that said, there are some authors in the indie and self-publishing sphere who have mastered ads, who have really figured out how to get different kinds of media attention, and they can make a phenomenal amount of their books. So again, it really just depends on what your goals are.
Mhm.
If you want that traditional deal, it takes longer, and it does take effort to make a living off of it. But it takes
Mhm.
effort to make a living off of anything. The
Right.
number one thing to be aware of is that the days of the traditional publisher, you get that deal and you can retire, are pretty much gone.
Mhm.
Unless you're James Patterson, Clive Cussler, or pick famous author,
Mhm.
it takes a lot of work to make it as a writer. So it's possible to go from indie to traditional. It really is. But it comes with its pluses and minuses.
Mhm.
And people just need to do their research and be aware of that in advance.
That's what I see you do actually very well, is market your books and your work on
Thank you.
Instagram. I mean, not only do you have really engaging posts, but you also put yourself out there quite a bit. I know you've been on multiple podcasts, multiple video interviews, kind of like this. Most recently, I know you've been working with a great buddy of mine, Chris from the Bond Report. Shout outs to Chris.
Yes.
Had an amazing conversation there. And I think that's the name of the game in this era of social media, right?
Mhm.
Great, so you create your novel and you just get the word out, even if it means doing stuff yourself. I mean, that's especially what, you've got to when you first start out, right? So I
Mhm.
would almost suggest like create an Instagram, create a social media presence, and
Mhm.
do your own self marketing so more eyes can get onto your work. And you never know who's watching. It could be the right place at the right time, and then boom, you
Mhm.
strike a deal.
Another great person to check out is Ryan Pote.
Mhm.
He recently published, he's got a book coming out called Ghost City, but his first book,
Ooh.
Blood and Treasure, came out. And he's very much like inspired by the Indiana Jones, Clive Cussler, James Bond kind of thing.
Sweet.
And
Yeah.
he's done an amazing job of building his audience and fan base on Instagram. And just, it's like, wow, that's what I want to be able to do, is like keep pushing
Yeah,
that
yeah,
envelope.
definitely. So we're gonna go back to Bond a little bit here
Mhm.
before we finish up with some concluding questions. So we talked about obviously Fleming, who the
Mhm.
originator of Bond. Now we're in this new era of multiple continuation novels, multiple continuation novelists. I know we
Mhm.
have some stuff that are Bond adjacent, like the Quantum of Menace, I believe, is the
Mhm.
new Q branch type of novel. And then we also have Kim Sherwood's novels, kind
Mhm.
of from the different perspectives of different double O's. What are your thoughts on the continuation of the James
Mhm.
Bond, the literary James Bond IP, and where would you, if you had a say, would like to see it go in the future?
I really love the continuation Bond novels. I would say I've read a good many of them. I have
Mhm,
not read all the John Gardners. I try to remember if I read a John Gardner, it was a different era, and I have to
mhm,
take that into account when I try
mhm.
reading them. I think that Raymond Benson is still one of the best James Bond continuation authors we've had. He's been on
Agreed.
my show Suit Up with Terrance Layhew several times. Amazing guy. I absolutely adore The Hook in the Eye, for anyone that hasn't read it yet.
Mhm,
Incredible book. But I feel like James Bond as a literary character needs to keep doing what they're doing. I know they just released information about Charlie Higson's James Bond, like,
yeah,
adult novel, and I'm so excited for that. Now, that said, I have seen some reports that are clickbaity that's like, "Oh, he's trying to take Bond in this direction to try and break down who James Bond is." It's a delicate balance, I think. But really, what I want is more of what we got from a balance of what we got from Anthony Horowitz in
Mm,
writing what feel like very Fleming-esque James Bond novels with what Raymond Benson did, which is these are James Bond novels where that feel like a Pierce Brosnan film. They're very adventure forward, with Bond as the character still feeling very much like the one that we got from the Ian Fleming books. And that's kind of what I would like to see is a
mm,
balance of good action stories, good adventure stories, but with that core character of who Bond is, because I don't feel like we need to deconstruct James Bond. What we need to do is just keep what works going. Bond's like miniature arcs that he has in the Fleming books, I think
mhm,
are great. And I think that I actually really love that Anthony Horowitz in With a Mind to Kill was able to piggyback off of kind of the conclusion of the Spectre arc and the You Only
mhm.
Live Twice arc
Yep.
that we eventually get.
Mhm.
But that's what I want to see. It's just good old fashioned adventure storytelling. We don't need to have 300 plus page books. Ian Fleming Publications, listen up here. We have $1 billion idea for you. Let's do a anthology continuation short story collection with a James Bond centric like mission short story from each one of the living continuation authors. That would be so incredible to
Wow.
just have like get one from Jeffrey Deaver, get one
Yes.
from William Boyd, get one from Sebastian Fox, get one from Raymond Benson, get 3 from Raymond Benson, please. And just compile this beautiful little aesthetically pleasing collection that's like the Bond years or something like that, and just make them these mini missions.
Oh, and you forgot one author too. Mr. Terrance Layhew needs to be included in that. Come on
That
now.
would
Like
okay.
I
I think that be I would probably be throwing up if like you hear those stories of guys that like get cast as Superman or James Bond, and it's like they're either it's two things. One, they're like, oh, this is great, awesome. And they just kind of go about their day. Or they're vomiting in the toilet because they understand how like much pressure they're suddenly under.
right. Yeah. But hey, you never know. Anything can happen. And that's
Anything
kind
can
of the
happen.
main backbone of the series.
Hmm.
Anything can happen and you can find yourself in a situation that you've been only dreaming of if you get pushed in the right direction. So this is a perfect segue to our kind of our concluding topic here. And I want to spend some extra time on this because it's so
Hmm.
important. But I would love for you to share some challenges,
Hmm.
how you got through those challenges. I know you shared a little bit about one earlier, but I'm sure there's some other ones. And then also just speak on behalf of those who are on the fence of wanting to go out there. They may be a little nervous, they may be scared, they may not know what to do, but kind of share some insight on what, push them to do what they want to do, fulfill that novel, even if it's just writing a chapter. I'm curious
Hmm.
on your thoughts on all that.
One specific challenge, I'll give two challenge examples here. My I wanted to write nonfiction. I thought that's where I was going to head, and
Mhm,
instead decided, and it just kept getting hard to try starting. So I decided to pick something I thought would be easy to do, which is I wrote Reason and Romance, which is a romance novel written from the man's perspective, which
mhm,
definitely was not the I thought it was straightforward, and it is in a lot of senses. I think it's still a fun story, but it's definitely not something marketable. But it is something that I finished. It is something that I finished writing and that I enjoyed writing. And it made
mhm.
me just rediscover this love of writing fiction that I had kind of buried under the guise of wishing to be a professional auteur author. And the other is one Man's Treasure, which is my, like, treasure hunting adventure
Mhm,
novel, is the first one of those that I told. Originally, I was going to self-publish it, and then a small indie press approached me about publishing it. And then I kinda got strung on the hook for, like, a year with
mhm.
them saying, "Oh, we'll do it. Oh, we're not," and never giving me a contract, and just it sat in limbo for far longer than I wanted it to. It also just nothing ever went anywhere, and I just ended up self-publishing it. But just being aware that there are going to be opportunities like that to potentially come up, especially if you're good. If you know how to write, people will want you to write. Know that you need to be very careful about who you make deals with. and just be aware that there's always a potential that someone's going to try taking advantage of you in that.
Mhm.
And I think that that's just important to, especially as you do more and more. And I don't know about the rest of you, but since AI has become a thing, I get emails like 2 or 3 a
Geez.
day from these
Mhm.
bots trying to tell me, "Oh, we can help you market your books, or we can do this, or we can do that." And it's all some kind of scam. So
Mhm.
just being aware of that, being confident enough in yourself to go about your own way is important.
Mhm.
There's no perfect way of doing something. There's no, this is the only way to do something,
Mhm.
especially writing that has so many different opportunities and variations. I think that there are specific rules to stories. I think that something I would encourage everyone to do two things, and in this order. Write whatever you want to write. Finish a specific like word count of a project, even if it's just a short story, and then enjoy having finished.
Mhm.
Finishing is important. Finishing is good. James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, has a great quote, which is, "An unfinished work can't change you.
Mhm.
Only finished work can." And then after you do that, read books about how stories are told. I see too many people decide that they want to tell stories and then never actually get good at telling stories.
Mhm.
And so what they do is they keep producing subpar work when they could be producing better work if they just understood this is how story structure works, or this is how writing characters work. And there's a lot that you can learn through doing it. But much like just having this conversation, why why go through a whole bunch of pain and suffering to learn it yourself if someone already else
Mhm.
has? So there are amazing books on the writing process. There are amazing books on story structure. There are amazing books on how to create good characters. Two books I highly recommend are The Secrets of Story and The Secrets of Character by Matt Bird, a James Bond fan who I've actually had on the show before. Um, Fantastic books. I highly recommend them. You don't have to do everything in them, but they do a great job breaking down this is what a good story
Mhm.
has. And too many people, it's easy to, especially if you have a kind of a go get 'em attitude already, you dive into it and you're like, "This is amazing. This is awesome." And then you're afraid of being told that you're not.
Mhm.
Accepting that criticism or accepting that learning, that sense of humility to understand, I don't know how to do this, is so necessary in any of this because it's an apprenticeship. It's not
Mhm.
a one and done. This is never a one-time project. Like, Chris, the more you write, the better you become a writer. And it's a lifelong, joyful pursuit that you can take when you want to understand the craft and the majesty of writing.
Mhm. I love that. I'm soaking all this up, man, because what people don't understand is that I'm being a little selfish here. Every single person that I have on the show or the series, I'm taking notes. I'm taking mental notes because I'm learning so much, and that's also exciting. And a testament to the Bond community is that people are so willing to share their
Mhm.
experiences. So the only way people are going to be able to continue this, which is writing novelization for years to come, is if we share information. So I mean, Terrence, thank you so much for that because I am taking notes because there are a lot of things that I had questions too, not just questions I thought people would enjoy learning about or may have themselves, but I was a little selfish and I asked a few questions that I want to know.
Hey, I
But
have a podcast exclusively based around my own selfish interests, so no judgment here.
and one thing you did mention, which I thought was really important, a lot of people may not realize when they are writing novels, is the research behind certain
Mhm.
things. And we'll
Yes.
kind of end on this because it's something near and dear to both of our hearts, and that is aviation. So, when you were writing about all the aviation stuff within both of your Mitch Mayhew adventures, like what I'm just curious, what inspired you? I know you said you love the 1920s aviation, but what was your process in kind of learning the ins and outs of? Because I know from my perspective, because I'm a pilot, I know all those years of studying and going through all the books and the manuals and taking the tests, and it's just it's a lot, but you gain so much information. I'm
Mhm.
sure from a writer, it's almost the same thing because you want to be as authentic as possible, right?
Mhm. And actually this goes into a bit of a broader topic that I just want to quickly introduce here, which
Yeah.
is the there are two forms of research I think that should be done in almost any brain project. One is you should, in theory, already have some kind of interest that triggers then the thing. I think that another shortcoming that happens with some writers is when you just write and you don't go out and live adventures. I think that is something to Fleming as a just man, is that he genuinely did try. Even if he didn't do everything that Bond does, he at least was around people that did, or he went and he heard those stories. He was someone engaged in life. That always say yes to adventure is just such a great ethos in a lot of senses.
Mhm.
Self-destructive at times, but
Yeah.
still important. And I think that this is something that's a credit to this series, which I think, again, also happens in James Bond community, where we don't want to just like the clothes, like the watches, like the style. We want to also like the life in some ways. The essential skill sets of being a spy and being a capable person, I think, are what attract us to Bond as a character. Is that idea of his being able to walk into any situation and be perfect and be a plum, or when things go bad, being able to adjust to it. I like to think that writing, you should have that similar sense of, I want to discover more of the world. I want to learn. I want to participate in and be engaged in. To that point, I really liked a great book by Alexander Rose called Empires in the Sky. And it was about the race between Pan Am and Zeppelin to be the first transatlantic flight. It was fascinating. I loved it. I didn't realize that the blimp, the Zeppelin, the airship was nearly the default form of air travel, and airplanes were almost just written off. There were a few chapters in there, just a paragraph about these male pilots that would carry a pistol on their hip because you never knew if your plane was going to go down. That little sentence was what inspired me writing about Mitch Mayhew, because I was like, oh, that's an adventure moment. That's you're doing your job and something goes wrong. And I just found it fascinating. Then the research to actually go into the aviation, I will readily admit, I am not a huge AI advocate. I think that especially in writing, you should always be careful about how much you're using it. I find it very useful for research, especially when it comes to very specific niche questions. So when I ask, how does a pilot in the 1920s land this type of plane? And it can give me step-by-step instructions. That's what I've used to really get an idea of what the specific steps were. In terms of like experiences, I'm fortunate in that my brother-in-law is a pilot. So I occasionally go to him and go, hey, so tell me about this. What's funny is I didn't realize at first Pros of Procrastination is the sequel to Reason and Romance, so it's a rom-com novel. I created an adventure hero, like romantic lead, who one of his major things is he has his own private plane, and so like I've always had like this little inkling of, I think that the whole being the pilot and can go anywhere, anytime is fascinating, and that's what then eventually led into reading more about the early era of aviation, and then spun into eventually going, yeah, Mitch Mayhew's a cool cat. Have you seen the Lego set?
Yeah. Oh, the Pan Am one? Oh, I'm getting
Yes.
that. Yes.
Oh,
they
they had the full model display at my local Lego store, and I was like, I don't know where I'd put this.
Yeah, it's gonna be
It's huge.
hot
It's
ticket item.
beautiful.
Yes. Oh, and by the way, I'm sure there's already people on eBay that created lighting kits for it. So, I mean, like the DB5 actually has a lighting kit. Okay, now we're talking about Lego. See, that's the great thing about this. We can talk about whatever. I don't care. I love this. This is awesome. But no, seriously, it's so cool to see that you have clear passion for a certain topic. Could just not just aviation. It could be another thing as well, but you insert it in throughout the novels. That's kind of like your calling card almost, you know? It's like you talk about somebody who loves aviation or talk about a pilot. Oh, okay, so this is going to be a Terrance Layhew novel. I already know it's not a Terrance Layhew novel without a pilot or aviation, something. And that's awesome. So I would almost suggest or put out there too. It's like for those who are just starting out, figure out something you absolutely love, and it's totally cool to make it your calling card in your novelizations or in your writings or whatnot.
I really like the Wars of the Roses. I found it a fascinating time period. any time that there's a time of uncertainty and change
Mhm.
in culture is a great time to tell stories. I mean, that's part of
Mm,
why I picked the 1920s is it's the first like modern era. You
yeah.
have the world changing in this post World War One, pre World War II time period.
Mm,
And that was part of the reason for saying it there. The 60s is fascinating the same way because you have a post World War II world that is, especially in America, like riding high on this post war industrialism that
yeah.
honestly created highs that we may never see again because it was such a unique set of circumstances.
Mhm.
So, like, it, people, if you enjoy a particular topic, idea, this is one of the things I think Fleming did a great job on. Fleming picked, this is one of my biggest inspirations from Fleming. So maybe a good button here, that he picked a commodity as like the thread that the novel kind of hung on.
Mm,
Diamonds are forever, it's diamonds.
mhm.
In Goldfinger, it's gold. Like he would pick crops even. Like I love that in why is it escaping me? It's on Her Majesty's Secret Service. It's the world agricultural economy of
That's great.
England
Yep.
that is threatened here.
Yep.
He would pick a very specific type of issue, and that's kind of what he would rotate the story around. I think that if you have a specific interest, that's a good thing to like base the novel structure
Mm.
around or what the character's pursuit is because it's something you in turn are passionate about.
So good, so good. Oh my gosh, I'm just so thankful that again you took the time to come out onto my little series here and share your knowledge because I know I'm inspired now, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people out there watching that are inspired as well. So, thank you, my friend, so much for taking the time to do this. It means the world to me.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me on. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you. And then again, everybody, Thorn is out. Mitch Mayhew Adventures can be found on Amazon via the links in my description, as well as you got to give Terrance a follow because he'll have
Yes.
a link in his bio as well. That being said, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this one. Again, Terrance, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you on the next episode of Initial Bond. Take care, everyone. Until next time, I'm Christopher Morales, that one Bond guy.